professor in this
I'm sorry,
in the department.
No,
That's perfectly fine. I'm a professor in the department along with Dr. Lamphere, and we are on the board of directors of the North Carolina Youth Violence Prevention Center, which is a local nonprofit that's been around for over 10 years, and they offer a variety of programming for children in Robeson County. So the research director of the center is Dr. Paul Smokowski, and he has an extensive academic and research background, which I'll let him go into as many details as he would like, but he's the research director of the center, and he coordinates a lot of the programming that goes on. So we asked him to come and speak tonight to talk about a few different topics that he has not only expertise in, but has a lot of experience with programming for local youth. So as you might have heard while we were chatting a bit, it's going to be recorded because I know some of my students can't make it. So if you want to, everyone can mute, and if you don't want to be on video or whatever, that's perfectly fine. If you have any questions, you can write them in the chat, or you can unmute. I think Paul's plan is a pretty laid back thing too. So like if you unmute and say, hey, I have a question, I don't think he would mind. But I'll turn it over to him, and he's going to talk about some of these programs. So this is, again, Paul Smokowski, Dr. Smokowski.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt and Renee. I really appreciate being able to be with you all. Whoops, excuse me. I'm trying to get my screen set up here. And so Matt and Renee and I, we've been doing these kinds of lectures. As Matt mentioned, I'm from the North Carolina Youth Violence Prevention Center, and that is, that is located in Lumberton, and we do programming all throughout Robeson County. And I'll tell you a little bit about that later in the presentation. Today, our topic is going to be on adverse childhood experiences and youth traumatic stress. So there's a lot actually in the news recently after the pandemic about youth mental health, especially having missed a year of school or a year and a half with the pandemic. Then there's a lot of adolescent mental health issues that are going on. And in addition to that, we have a real problem that I'll talk about later on in terms of stressful experiences like school shootings, for example. So we'll take a look at that, and I'm very local. I'm living here in Lumberton and working with a nonprofit. So a lot of the examples that I will give to you today are local Robeson County examples. We do work in Pembroke and a number of different kinds of programs that I hope to be able to talk with you about. As Matt mentioned, we are recording this, but please feel free. You can stop me with a question. I'm happy to have a dialogue with you. Also, you can put it in the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that. My goal today for us is to look at some different types of childhood stress and symptoms of trauma, and then how does that impact child development and then development into adulthood. And finally, we'll talk about some programs and how you can assist youth who are having signs of stress and difficulty. Okay? So that's our agenda. So now, as a country, this is national data, and we have done really well in some areas of public health. So, for example, the red line shows that teenagers are drinking a lot less. So alcohol use has really gone down over the last 10 years. Hold on one second. I think that, let me take a look here if someone is accidentally not
Yeah, Paul, if this is your room, can you mute all, or if everyone could, I think everyone muted now. Okay, yeah, if anyone, if everyone could hear me, could you please mute, because there is some feedback. Thank you.
There's a little feedback. I want everyone to be able to hear. Okay, oops. I'm sorry, Matt. I muted you, but you can certainly come
That's
up.
perfect. That's
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. So as a country, when we think about public health and adolescents, teenagers, we've done a great job actually trying to work on alcohol use. It's really gone down over the last, since 2007 to 2019, we see quite a drop from 45% to 30%. That is a big change in adolescent life. We also see a drop in the green line there. Now the green line is cigarette use. So smoking has gone down, but what I don't have on this chart is vaping because it's so new. The data really isn't there yet for vaping. You can see marijuana use is about the same. So what's in the news though is not those indicators, it's these. So first of all, you see the red line. What's really gone up is adolescent depression. So that's feeling sad or persistently hopeless. And that has climbed to about 37% of youth in high school. So, I mean, that's a really large number of teenagers feeling depressed and hopeless about their future. And if you look at the green line, that's almost 20% of youth who have considered suicide in the past year. And that's a really sad statistic for an advanced society like ours. This, again, is national data for high schoolers. So you can see bullying has not changed very much. That has been a piece of my academic research for about 15 years. So bullying in high school is about 35%. And that sometimes is broken down, 20% physical bullying, verbal bullying, and the other 15% is cyberbullying, which is really taken on with, you know, the internet and Instagram and lots of apps that youth use all the time. So bullying is an issue, and it's the most common type of youth violence is bullying in school. Now I want to talk with you about adverse childhood experiences and what we'll call them ACEs, and they've become a famous research topic. And coming from a criminology background like you are, it's really helpful to understand ACEs and how they impact youth development. So what are ACEs? Emotional, physical, or sexual abuse during childhood, emotional or physical neglect, and then being victimized by bullying. Also, you can have a parent substance use, a parent who has some type of mental illness, having a parent or caregiver who is incarcerated or being in a domestic violence situation, or parents who are divorced, which is very, very common. But sometimes the divorce is high conflict and toxic, meaning that they use the children against each other during the divorce. And that can be a very difficult experience for youth who are caught in the middle. So we often think of childhood as, you know, a joyful time. I'm sure that you have your favorite memories of childhood, and so do I, we all do. We would like to think about it like this, but actually if we had some maybe radar glasses, it would be more like this, where if you could tell adverse childhood experiences, those are kind of the ovals on this that I've put on this picture. And one thing about ACEs is that they pile up. So about 1 in 4 kids, the most common ACE is economic hardship. That can be poverty. And about 45% of youth in Robson County are living in poverty. So we have very high rates here. So economic hardship, divorce, parent alcoholism, about 1 in 10 youth experience that. Exposure to violence, again, 10%. So if you have multiple experiences like this, then you are less likely to be able to cope. And and so that can cause traumatic stress. So let's keep moving. Let me give you some examples. Here you see at the bottom of this chart the number of ACEs, and as the number of ACEs go up, then kids have harder time staying engaged in school because it's really hard to concentrate. They have more externalizing behavior. That's aggression, aggressive behavior. They fight more, they're angrier. Not being able to stay calm or controlled. Of course not if you're under great stress. It's very difficult to finish tasks, and that gets in the way of being academically successful if you just can't concentrate that well. More kids with higher ACE scores have learning disabilities, and they tend to have more grade repetition. So what I want you to get out of this chart, and the take-home point, is that the more ACEs a youth has, the worse the impact is on their health, on their behavior, and on their functioning. And that's really important because if as a young criminologist you choose to work in the school system, then you'll have kids with multiple ACEs all around. If you choose to work as a police officer, this is in the background on why kids end up getting into juvenile justice system, for example. So this take-home point, if you kind of keep it in the back of your mind, it could certainly impact many different pieces of your career later on, depending on what type of jobs you decide to take. So let's talk a little bit about the most common form of youth violence, which is bullying. I'll tell you a little bit about our program for anti-bullying a little bit later in the presentation. But what is bullying? It has 3 components. It's one youth who intends to harm another one. There's some type of power imbalance, and then this behavior is repeated over time. So there's repetition. So
Paul, I'm sorry. We're getting feedback. Could you do?
I was going to say, Paul, do you want to make
again?
me a co-host so I can mute people?
Yeah, sure. Let me do that.
Hey, Chayton Moore, can you please mute yourself?
All right. So I'm going to make Renee. I'm going to change you to the host. Will that stop the recording, Renee?
It shouldn't.
Okay, Renee, you're now the host. Congratulations.
Okay.
All right, everyone, thank you. So this is really interesting in terms of the definition of bullying, because that element of power imbalance, that's in this picture that I'm showing you, one youth is taller, bigger, stronger than the other one. And we often think of that, but it doesn't have to be that obvious. It can be a youth who is more social. It can be a youth that has more, comes from a wealthy background and lets you know, so more privileged. So a lot of elements of dominance and status feed into the bullying dynamic. And this can also be around issues of race, and it can be around gender inequalities. So you see where I'm going with this. This disparity in power imbalance can be many of the different types of differences between people. So for example, youth who are new immigrants and they're coming to a school and they don't know anyone, there's a great possibility for power imbalance there. We often do in our program a little drama about the new kid, and the new kid who doesn't have a friendship network yet is very vulnerable to bullying because they're not within the peer network yet. So bullying can be physical, it can be cyber, it can be excluding certain kids from social experiences or opportunities. And you have different roles, the bully, the victim, and the bystander. There's lots and lots of bystanders who see the bullying and they have to either decide whether or not they're going to do anything about it, or some of them even join in and are negative bystanders. They join in with the bully, and some of them might, this is what we try and do with our program, is have an upstander or bystanders who join and help the victim, but that's less common. Okay, so why is this a big deal? Why study it or pay attention to it? Well, it seems it's the most enduring and underrated problem in our school system, and about one incident happens every 7 minutes in middle school. So I forgot to say, in middle school, the bullying rate is about 45%. So almost half of kids are bullied in middle school. So it's a really difficult time of life for many kids. So they have done lots of studies, and they've found that across the entire globe, there's a prevalence rate of about 35% for traditional bullying, and again, 15% for cyberbullying. So, and depending on what country you live in, the rates can be dramatically different, from 15% to 70% of kids saying that they've been bullied. Okay, I'm gonna just jump by so much data that I have over the years. So where does bullying happen? This was a surprise when I read this study, because you would think it's hidden, right? You go out on the playground and in some under the tree where people can't see, that's where, but that's not the case. Now bullying happens in the hallway, and the most common there, all the way to the left, it happens, 42% of kids who have been bullied say it was inside the classroom. So this is where an adult is present, sometimes two adults if there's an assistant. And it can happen right in the context where you're trying to focus and learn. So I think that that's also makes bullying such a big problem. It's a roadblock to actually being able to learn in school. This data goes back about 5 years. So, but this is from the Robeson County schools, very local. It might have changed. Again, this is 5 years ago, but I wanted to give you a sense of what the school environment might feel like. So about 95% of kids say that kids make fun of other kids. Okay, that might be usual. But 2/3, 66%, say that there's disagreements between different racial groups. 95% of kids say that they have seen fights among students. And then again, 2/3 have seen other kids damage school property. About 1 out of 4 kids are carrying weapons, and about half of kids, 47%, report being in gangs. So those are some rough statistics if you're trying to stay on track and do well in school. Everything around you is pretty stressful, and I want to show you that. So this kind of really brings it home. This is a video of one of the Robeson County schools. I don't remember which one, but it doesn't matter because this is so common. I want you to look and just kind of see how the kids are reacting with the bullying. Okay, now, this is always an uncomfortable video to watch for me, and because how long did it take for that adult in the class to actually intervene? You might not have noticed that there is a teacher there. I think it's a substitute teacher that day, but it goes for a good, minute and a half of one youth being hit and kicked on the floor until there is any kind of intervention. And that is just, you can imagine coming back the next day, if you can think about that, to this class where everybody in your class saw you get beat up like that for over a minute and no one helped. I just wonder, how can kids then readjust to being there and having to sit with the classmates and try and focus and learn? Now, the other aspect of this that I want to show you is that, yes, those kids, often in our school system, the policy is for both kids to get suspended, which is what happened in that case. So both of them are suspended. I think it was for a week. And as a victim, you're now losing time in school, and so it gets worse. But it also gets worse when you're at home suspended. So whoops, excuse me, hold on. Hold on. Because you're remembering that scene. Hold on, here we are. On the right-hand side, after the beatdown, then it starts to go online. And you can see here an Instagram post, I believe, that the bully is taking it online into the cyberbullying, telling everyone how she beat your ass. Okay, so it goes on and on. You can see the repetition, and you can see how it can be damaging physically, but also the cyberbullying, there's just no stop. Kids tell us once it goes online, it just is constant because you have no idea how far it's spreading. Okay, so I want to show you one more example of what this looks like when it gets really bad. So this was a bullying incident that you'll see that's very different. If I can get it to run. Oh, there we go. This also happened at a local school. You can see there the principal, assistant principal are involved. And yes, this one is also very hard to watch because what you just saw is correct, that the victim there had his head stomped on. So again, that can be an intense fight where bullies have friends that also join in, and it becomes a much bigger fight, whether or not it is connected to gangs, and there is a lot of gang issues in our schools. Okay, so when you ask victims of bullying, well, why do you think you were bullied? About 1 in 4 say it's something about their appearance is why. So it might be my ears are too big, my nose is too big, I'm too short. Any of these things, I might be overweight or I might be too thin. I've seen it both ways. And that's the funny thing is the bully is very, very good at picking out areas of sensitivity in the victim. And so that makes the bullying even worse. I mean, it's hard to get punched in the face, right? That is a really difficult, painful experience. At the same time, if my bully is shouting, at me that something that I'm sensitive about, that I'm too, every day I come in and he calls me shorty. And boy, I hate my height. I just haven't hit puberty yet, right? So it becomes where it undermines the victim's self-esteem. And they have to go back into that school day after day. And this is why it's a long-standing, people remember their bullying experiences 10, 20 years later, because they're so packed with emotion. So it can be around race, it can be around doing poorly in school or doing very, very well in school. That can also be, it can be around religion, gender, sexual orientation. It all depends on what that youth is sensitive about. And a lot of this, like adolescent life, is about fitting in. So bullies are really good at pointing out ways that you might stand out from the group. If you remember when you were a teenager, a lot of times what you wanted to do is fit into the group. And bullies ostracize their victims. So this is a drawing that a victim of bullying made, and I think it really captures all that we've been talking about. So there he is in the bottom of the screen here, and he's saying, please stop, give it back to me. This is a backpack that the bully has taken, and the bully is saying, no, I'm not giving you nothing. And then here's the negative bystander who helps out the bully. He might be a kind of a flunky if you think about it. One of the bully's gang, and he's a kind of making it worse. And then what I want to point out is look at all these classmates, just like in the video that you saw, saying, you guys are so funny, kick them, kick them. Hey guys, y'all are really, really funny. Slap him some more. And then you have the teacher here who's saying, oh Lord, I have to deal with this again. Okay, so this really captures a lot of the dynamic that you just saw in the video. So what's the long-term effects if you have this type of experience? Well, the research shows that there's reduced academic performance. It's just really hard to focus and learn when you're always on guard for when this type of event can happen again. There's increased rates of depression and anxiety and humiliation, feeling rejected, feeling suicidal. When victims become adults, they can have trouble with intimacy, of trusting other people. And they can have situations where they become violent as adults. Now, this is one thing that I really want to stress. The research shows that it takes about 7 years to, on average, where kids report depression. So if you think about that in middle school, that's going all the way through high school and maybe into college, feeling depressed about being bullied. And feeling aggressive also can last up to 6 years or so on average. So those are long-term effects of this bullying dynamic. So what happens? Why is it so impactful? Well, bullying is a traumatic event. It sets off the body's alarm system, that fight or flight or freeze response, and that floods the body with all these stress hormones. And that's why we remember the incident so vividly, because your body is on high alert, and it then codes that memory very vividly. Here's another example of a drawing from a victim, and you can see he's being bullied there by this kid who is laughing, and he's probably been hit in the eye at least. But we've seen over and over with kids' drawings, they do these red halos, like they're almost radiating pain. And that's what the pictures look like. So it's definitely true that bullying hurts. That's what he wrote in this drawing. And that is really interesting because the social pain, when we feel humiliation, all human beings, when you feel humiliated, it processes in your brain in the same way as physical pain. So that's really, really profound that this getting hit in the eye feels about the same as the laughing that this bullying is doing, because it's social humiliation. It's the same circuits in the brain. Okay, so here's just some more information. About 27% of students who have been bullied feel bad about themselves, so it really decreases their self-esteem. That's the most common effect of bullying. Some kids believe what the bully says, and that, as a social worker, as a therapist, that's where I try and help them to be able to reject those messages that they got, from other kids, and feel that they are a valuable person. Because if they feel bad about themselves for 6 or 7 years afterwards, then their whole personality can change. And then you get into major issues like depression and feeling suicidal. Or you can become extremely angry. And this is a picture of victims from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School massacre. So in that, that was a school shooting. It's one of the most, one that had the most casualties, with 17 killed and 17 injured. Now, this is what I want to show you. Here's a quote from Nicholas Cruz, where he videotaped himself, put it on the internet. And this is what he wanted to say to the world on that day. Today's the day that it all begins, the day of my massacre shall begin. All the kids in school will run in fear and hide. From the wrath of my power, they will know who I am. So often with shootings in school, they analyze, well, what happened? Why was it? What was the motive for the shooting? And it often comes back to questions on if the shooter was a victim of bullying. Now, the FBI has done some research on this, looking at different school shooters, and they see 3 things in common, only 3 things, which are suicidal ideation, some type of victimization in childhood. So that brings us right back to the ACEs that we talked about. So feeling like having been victimized, it could be in child abuse and neglect, it can be in a dating relationship, it can be from being a victim of bullying. And then they get so angry and have a desire for attention or fame. So on the internet, there's templates that people will, unfortunately, youth who are kind of thinking about this, they talk about going Columbine, because that was such a famous school shooting. So this dynamic of planning a school shooting in order to get famous, maybe take more victims than the last one, and then most school shooters are killed in the incident. So what happens is like a blaze of glory kind of thing. And so this is a real toxic dynamic. And if you saw the news yesterday, I believe, there was in Nashville, it happened again, where there was a school shooter in a Christian school. Three elementary school children died, 3 adults died. So this is something that our society really has been struggling with at least for the last 30 years. So there are these elements of trauma, and they can have different symptoms. So I want to make you aware of symptoms because you may have people around you who have had these kinds of traumatic experiences, not necessarily a school shooting like I just mentioned, but being bullied while they were in middle school, for example, and they're still thinking about it, okay? Or just feeling belittled, the kind of that power dynamic. So you can have a lot of different kinds of trauma experiences, and some are more intense than others. But these are the symptoms that usually happen: irritable or angry mood, feeling aggressive or impulsive, having anxiety, physical problems like headaches or stomach aches, having a hard time focusing your attention. Now, social withdrawal is something that we really don't want victims to do because they turn inside, they kind of this turtle phenomenon, then they aren't able to access help. So there's a number of these different symptoms that are helpful to know and understand the dynamic. Now, again, like I showed you the ACEs, as there's more experiences, there's more trouble adjusting. So this shows you more bullying experiences, more anxiety, more depression, and more aggressive behavior. And that's what I found in this research is done in Robson County with youth here about 5 years ago. So as criminology students, I want to emphasize this. On the right-hand side is our juvenile justice population. And on the left-hand side is just general, everyone, the general population of youth. So take a look. 70% of kids in the juvenile justice system report having mental health issues versus 20% in the general population. About half of kids, juvenile justice youth, have substance use issues. And at the bottom, 90% of kids in the juvenile justice system have had exposure to trauma versus 25% in the general population. So what this is showing is that with mental health issues, substance use, trauma, youth are not necessarily getting the help that they need, the therapy that they might be useful to them. Instead, they may be acting out, maybe getting into trouble, connecting with an unfortunate group of friends, and ending up in the juvenile justice system. So I want to link, I wrote a book about 3 years ago, and I want to link different kinds of bullying together because it's not just a middle school problem. It actually happens across the lifespan. So about 25% of youth experience child maltreatment at some point in their early years. Then you have 30% of youth reporting sibling bullying. So this is an older sister or an older brother that bully the younger brother. You take that onto the playground or into the classroom, and again, 35% of youth report being bullied in school. But then you move forward in time, you start dating, and all of that exposure to kind of this negative power dynamic, then it comes out in dating relationships. So 32% of youth who are have reported teen violence in dating from a dating partner. Okay, cyberbullying we mentioned before, that's about 16% of youth and can happen across the lifespan. And you have a lot of hazing. So it starts often in middle school. It can start when a youth wants to join a sports team, for example. So, and this is where the veterans, so to speak. So those who have been on the team a while, they do hazing of the newcomers, right? And we often think about this also with fraternities and sororities. And there's been some incidents in the news where people will be hazed and they actually will die from the experience. So then we move into adulthood and we have intimate partner violence. And again, it's amazing across these. This is why I wanted to show you this, how common the prevalence is across these different types. So about 36% of adults report intimate partner violence. And back to middle school, 35% report being bullied in middle school. It's often the same folks, the same victims who are moving across their lifespan experiences and being victimized in different ways. In the workplace, about 1 in 5 report being bullied. That can be by a supervisor. And then elder abuse is less common, but things like scamming elders out of money, that's pretty common. But 10% of elders report some type of abuse or victimization, and it's often by a family member. And it's often over money. Okay, so the other thing about this is that you have very similar effects for both the bully and the victim. So perpetrators, individuals who are bullies, they report increased anxiety, stress, trauma. Sounds familiar? Just like the victim side. So increased aggression and violence, increased justice system involvement, substance use, abuse, suicidality, all these things. It's incredible that both sides of this really pay a high price in their mental health. So again, victims, higher anxiety, stress, PTSD, trauma, humiliation, all of the very similar experiences. So how we can try and decrease this dynamic would really make us a healthier society as a whole. And that's exactly now what I want to bridge to is, well, how can we help people heal and kind of move past some of these traumatic experiences? So I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I work with a team called VEEP, which is Victim Empowerment and Expression Program at our center. And we actually, we provide different types of therapeutic experiences for youth and adults as well. One of the things that we try and emphasize is social support, so that someone who is going through traumatic stress don't isolate themselves and withdraw, which is the most common coping mechanism, is to hide, whether it's in an adolescent's bedroom or running in the woods or trying to stay away from other people. So you don't want that. You want to try and help the youth to maintain at least one friend. And there's enormous healing power of friendship, where often victims will make friends with other victims because they have shared experiences, and that's fine. It's that there's healing in being able to have that social support from at least one other youth. Now, along with that, exercise is always great for the body. It has kind of the chemicals that are released in exercise help to dispel depression. So, and it also kind of gives the body a different experience to deal with stress. Also, dealing with stress can be creative activities, sometimes, well, having a healthy amount of sleep, because too much sleep can be a sign of depression, but rejuvenating sleep can really help with processing these types of memories. Okay, and we do counseling, which can be trauma-focused therapy. It can be different types of experiences, which I'll get into in a minute. So this is kind of our center, and I want to let you know, we've really had very nice relationship with UNC Pembroke in sponsoring interns, folks who may want social service hours. We do that kind of thing. And I want to tell you a little bit about the programs that we sponsor. So first, there's a program that is universal called Mental Health First Aid, and also Community Resilience is another workshop that gives very specific and simple skills on how to deal with stress and trauma. So Mental Health First Aid, just as a heads up, we're working with Dr. Lamphere to try and offer that to students. A number of faculty have taken the class. So it is something that's really helpful, because just like CPR, you learn how, if you're in a grocery store, or if you're in school and you go to the restroom and there's someone crying, you know, how do you start a conversation? How can you help someone else who's having some stress, whether it's traumatic experience or not? Okay, in addition to that, we do a lot of creative arts. We do expressive arts for painting. We use we do paint parties, which has a theme, and youth come together. I'll show you some examples of that in just a second. We do interactive theater in the school system, where we help kids dramatize stories about bullying, so that then they can think of different strategies for how to handle it. We also do a number of things. Like I mentioned, we do psychotherapy for trauma, and some that are not on here that I want to mention. One in particular, we do mediation in the courts. So this is adults instead of youth, but sometimes people get so angry at different experiences that they want to use the court system to get at the other person. And we want justice, right? Of course we want to go in front of a judge, plead our case, and have justice done. But a lot of times the court system is much more frustrating in working through this idea of justice, and it can take years of frustration. So we have a mediation program where we try and help people get out of the court system, decrease their conflict, and be able to move on. We also have what's called violence interrupters, and those are my folks in the community who rove around and try and respond when conflict happens, to try and help people to resolve things in a non-violent way. So those are called violence interrupters. They're working with the police departments in Robson County. Oh, so I'm just going to speed through this for time. Mental Health First Aid is a really interesting model on how you can engage another youth or an adult on if they're having some type of mental health concern or a substance use issue. How do you help them provide space for them to be able to trust you, talk about you know, the feelings that they have, where you're listening, giving some recognition, maybe some information on where they might get some help. And that's what the model is. It's very useful, because these issues come up all across the lifespan, and it's nice to have skills to be able to help other human beings, really. This is the community resiliency model, which really talks a lot about stress and trauma and the biology of the nervous system. And it gives these 6 different skills: tracking your stress, what resources do I have when I'm feeling stressed, how can I ground myself. So again, this is a nice model that we do workshops all over the place in order to try to have people have skills that they're ready when they go through a stressful event. Let me just give you some examples. This is the creative arts, and we're so proud of these kids and what they do. So each month we have a guest artist, and they help the kids draw, and they make paintings. They're very proud, as you can see on some of these pictures. Each month there is a theme that goes with that month. So we've done building bridges, journeying into the new year. Actually, this is April. We're next week we're doing buds to blossoms. What would you like to nurture in your life? What would you like to paint that is, a metaphor for what you want to grow, ways you want to grow. So it's therapeutic and it's also creative. We did it online during the pandemic, and you can see here kids showing off their paintings. A lot of times they put it on their bedroom walls, and it's an experience that they're proud of, and they get that creative energy going. So some more examples, and youth are just, it's lovely, this type of experience. A lot of times with budget cuts, the school system has trouble where they've cut arts programs, right, in order to focus on academics. So here we're doing this as in the community for enrichment, when it used to be more in the schools than it is now. So paint parties or creative painting, it can calm the nervous system. It actually has evidence behind it as art therapy, and it can really help youth connect with areas to the brain that aren't really connected to language. So sometimes all of our feelings, we can't put it into words, but sometimes we can put it into pictures in a painting. And here's just some other examples. On Mother's Day, on the left, we had mothers come and paint with their daughters. We've done all sorts of things, different types of exploration. Let's pretend we're going to Africa. What would you like to draw that's an African safari painting? So I think I've gone through this a little bit, so I'll just zoom through the examples here of the youth that we've worked with. You can do this with all different ages. We've done it with adults too. We do it at Robson Community College. We haven't done it at UNCP, but if the counseling service would like it, I'd be happy to be able to do that. And we've also done it with families as a family event. So the last program that I'm going to tell you about, and then we'll open this up for questions and comments, is See It. So that's student expression and empowerment through interactive theater. And we're in the school system, and we'll have, let's say, the 7th grade come into the auditorium, and we'll put on a workshop where we engage the audience. They're actually creating a drama, and I have actors and there's a director, and the youth will give ideas about what should be the scene, what should be the main character, and what's his name? Okay, where'd he come from? And then we act it out. And as this happens, a lot of times teenagers will be looking at issues that are important to them. So that can be bullying. A lot of the time we do bullying. It can be fitting in. It can be handling Thanksgiving. when someone is coming that you haven't seen but in a long time? How do you handle that? So we act out a drama, and at different points we'll stop and we'll say, okay, now what would happen next? And honestly, in the bullying that we've done in the schools, a lot of the youth will say, oh, they fight, they fight. And I'll ask them, okay, you want to fight? You want a little fight, a big fight? They always want a big fight. And so, okay, we'll act it out, but we always do that in slow motion so that it really sinks in. We don't get anyone hurt, but we act it out. And then, because the audience wanted the fight, then they have to cope with the consequences. So if you have a gang fight on stage, well, what happens after that? Who's suspended? Why? And in one example, during the fight, the victim hit his head on the concrete wall, had a concussion, and then the audience had to follow up. Well, what happens next? Okay, that family wants to sue the school. Okay, well, let's see that. So they're actually creating this drama from the ideas that the audiences their members are bringing up. We act it out, and then we can say, well, what could have been different? So it really is like a laboratory for trying out different behaviors without having to do it in real life. Okay, so a lot of this I'm just gonna kind of go through, and we are back to here. We do offer, a program called Trauma-Focused Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, and it's had lots of research behind it. So we're one of the few agencies that offer mental health treatment like this for free of charge. And actually, we have a grant called Children Exposed to Violence, and it goes all the way up to age 24. So you don't have to say anything on this workshop here tonight. However, if you look at my contact information, if you have had a traumatic experience and you are interested in engaging with a therapist, we offer that service for free because it's grant funded. So our center provides this for Robson County. Just make a note, if that's something you may have a friend or you may have a family member who could benefit from it. Okay, and we're back to my favorite charts. So this, again, this is another bullying graphic that a youth drew. And I'm gonna leave it with this quote. Because it captures so much. This is a youth who is writing about their experience as a victim. And I'm just gonna read it because I know there's a lot on this slide, but if you just wanna listen, it's called Bullied into Solitude. And it says, I'm a victim of bullies. I'm too tall, I'm too big. I have phantom smells. I am different, I look wrong. I'm not to be talked to, only about. I am called vile things, but not by my name. I cling to the few who go through the same trail as me. We try to remind each other that we matter and are more than what they say. We wait on the day that peace comes. We are disappearing victims. Bullying is an equal opportunity ostracizer. It doesn't care about your race, religion, or wealth. Bullies thrive on the pain they inflict and the cheers they gather. They never consider the scars they place on their target's souls. Continuous tortures stick in a person like thousands of porcupine quills and are impossible to remove without help. Daily I see blind eyes speak to deaf ears, listen to double-edged tongues, and wonder at hard hearts. Friends choose not to see, so they won't be seen as the next target. and classmates choose not to hear so they don't suffer the lash of a bully's speech. Quietly and carefully, they tell me it'll be okay when they're not sure, when they are sure that no one will hear. Others just don't care as long as it doesn't affect them. Okay, where were you when my pleas fell into silence? So this is an essay that a victim wrote that I think is very, very powerful and captures a lot of the dynamics that I've seen in victims of bullying. So let me finish here. If someone around you or you have been bullied, there's a number of things that can help move on with life, help feel about increased self-esteem. But if someone you know or a youth that is near you, you can provide the space for that person to talk, to tell their story. You can be empathic and validate their feelings. One thing that helps a lot is simply saying, you can't make it better, but I'm sorry that you went through that, through the bullying event. That someone is on their side and listening to them is so therapeutic. You don't have to be a licensed social worker to do this. You can be an advocate, an upstander. Tell them that they didn't deserve to be treated that way, because one of the big problems is when the victim starts to believe what the bully is saying. So tell them that they didn't deserve it, that the bully is wrong, that they're a valuable person and they're worthy of caring and respect. Okay, and then try and hook that person in. This is, again, the social withdrawal that we see. So you can help them find a peer group that is accepting. Find a church community that's very helpful. And you can integrate them as a member of your group if you have a group of friends that are inclusive. And ask them, well, what can help make this situation better? A lot of times parents want to run in and either confront the principal, or I had one case where they signed on to Zoom and the mother was going to confront the bully while I was trying to give therapy to the youth. It didn't work well, I'll tell you that. So sometimes parents who are naturally protective, but the youth won't tell them because they don't want them to go and make it worse. So ask the victim, well, how can it help? What can I do to help? And here's just, again, my contact information is there. I do these workshops called Beyond Bullying, like you're in today. Thank you for coming. My name again is Paul Smokowski, and there's my email address, paul.smokowski@NC for North Carolina, YVPC for Youth Violence Prevention Center.org. My colleague Martika Bakayao is head of our Victim Services Program. And we also have Teen Court, which always needs volunteers and actually has had youth that go on to law school. It's a really great launching pad for if you're interested for going between criminology, let's say, and then going into law. Teen Court is a great way to have exposure to the system. Okay. And I'm going to stop sharing now. And I'm going to connect with you by asking you or inviting you, to the extent that you feel comfortable. Come off of mute if you like, and I will answer any questions or any comments that you have. I'm very open.
I really want to thank you for having this conversation, because for me, I was a victim of bullying and childhood abuse and stuff like that, and just having someone that just validates those feelings that, like for me, like I was abused with my dad and stuff like that, and just like seeing that, how it just seeing that in my adulthood just affects me so much as a person. And like seeing that on paper, like makes me feel like people are actually understanding and being more open to this conversation, because before it always was, oh, what happens at home stays at home and everything like that, and not being open and like not seeing the effects of like how it affects you as you grow older and things like that. Like, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. And absolutely, I couldn't agree with you more that what happens at home often is told to you to stay at home, but but that's not it. Then it gets bottled up, right? And so you are not alone. There are lots and lots of victims, but they often don't know each other because we don't talk about this as much. We hold it inside, and that's why it lasts so long. Those feelings can really like get bottled up. So thank you for sharing that. And again, if anyone on here knows someone that would benefit from services, we will have this this recording that Matt and Renee will share, and please reach out. I give you a lot of credit for reaching out with your own experience.
It looks like there's something in the chat, Paul.
It does. Okay. So let's see. I'll try and read this one. It says, I'm not defending bullying under any circumstances, but are bullies not given counseling as well? Okay, let me pause there. Yes, bullies can get counseling. And I'll tell you one thing, this is a really interesting comment. Thank you for putting it in the chat, because often bullies don't come out of nowhere. They are often bullied somewhere else. And it often happens at home that they're bullied by a sibling or by a parent, that they've gone through a domestic violence situation. And then those bullies end up taking it with them into other contexts. So yes, many times bullies have different emotional traumas that they also could benefit from counseling. Okay, let me see. 9 out of 10 bullies are victim. Oh, I think I just said what you said. So let me read what you said. 9 out of 10 bullies are victims of violence at home, and they tend to bully at school to finally have control over something in their lives. What's being done about that? Well, in our experience, we welcome victims of all kinds. So you might be a bully, but also be victimized, and you can come and get our services with that. We don't turn away anyone because they bullied someone. They might be acting out of other pain, just like you highlighted. Okay. Have y'all checked the home life of the kids that are bullied to get to the root of the problem? Right. And I think you noted, and yes, in the research as well, it shows that youth who bully others often are bringing it from a different environment. Now that often is home, and they might have a domineering parent. They might be in a domestic violence situation. And also they can be exposed to toxic environments in the community. So I don't want to lose track that it can be from the home, but it can also be from the neighborhood. It can be from areas that have a lot of gang activities. And then in order to be a part of the gang, you have to, bully someone else, or, there's a lot of that going on with gang issues. So thank you for your comment. It's definitely true. If you asked me, well, what's the recipe for creating a bully? I would say, well, having a youth that experiences multiple adverse childhood experiences. Remember what those are: abuse, neglect, exposure to violence, and then parent mental illness, parent substance use. So that's the equation for making a bully. Let's see, I welcome other comments.
Any last comments for Dr. Smikowski? Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dr.
You're welcome.
Smikowski. We really, really appreciate it. And then if anybody needs, he had put his contact info out there, but if you want his contact info, just email me and I can get you linked up with him.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no problem. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks,
Paul,
Paul.
you were, I just wanted to let you know you were up to 12 at one point.
Okay, thank you.
And then you'll get the recording for us.
Yeah, I'll process that. I'm gonna shut it off now.
Okay.
And then